Good morning, everyone. On this gray, rainy day, I want to show you how to make a healing little elixir. If you've seen golden milk or turmeric lattes in the news, on the media, in your favorite coffee shops, I'm going to show you a simple way to make a version of it at home. And I like this recipe not because it's trendy, but because it includes a variety of anti-inflammatory compounds and spices that we often don't cook very frequently with in the United States. And one of those is turmeric. The curcumin, which is the active compound in turmeric, offers that anti-inflammatory benefit. So we take supplemental forms as treatment for various conditions, but we can also get it in its natural form in the diet, in a powdered or spice blend, or in the root. It looks very similar to ginger, but it's more orange, and there's small little pieces like this, little roots, and we can grate that into our food or blend it to get the juice. Any way you wish to use it here. Turmeric is a spice we should be incorporating more often, and this is a great way to do that in a turmeric beverage. So I'm going to use the dried spice here. We do need certain compounds to enhance its absorption. I've mentioned that in the past. So black pepper and derivatives of black pepper help the absorption. You'll see supplement companies use bioactive compounds derived from black pepper to help us absorb the turmeric. We also need a source of fat. So I'm going to use a combination of a non-dairy milk beverage that you buy in a carton. So this is a coconut milk beverage, but you could use almond or soy or rice or oat. And a little bit of coconut oil just to enhance the fat content. Most milk beverages don't have much in the way of fat. If you're not using that beverage option, you could also use a can of light or full fat coconut milk. So I'm using non-dairy options here, but you could certainly use a whole milk or a reduced fat milk. Just make sure there's some type of fat to help absorb the curcumin. If you're using a canned coconut milk that's full fat, know that this is a highly saturated fat, so your ability to include it as part of a daily routine is really going to be on an individual basis here. What else am I using? Fresh ginger. If you don't have fresh, you could use ground and dried. Fresh tastes better, in my opinion, and I like to use the whole fresh option when I can. So I'm going to grate some of my fresh ginger. We're using cinnamon, also antioxidant and anti-inflammatory benefit, some blood sugar regulating properties, among other things. Some honey. I'm using a raw wildflower honey. You could use any variety or swap a different sweetener. Honey is one of those semi-therapeutic foods as well. We use it in times of sickness to soothe sore throats. Some people use it during allergy season to mitigate their immune histamine response to some of the pollen in the environment. All sort of anecdotal suggestions, but I like to use it because it does have compounds in it that are naturally helpful and protective. So that's my sweetener of choice. You need a saucepan, and we're going to combine all these ingredients on the stove. Grab your favorite mug and cozy up for a little beverage. Great as a substitute for a morning coffee or evening tea. Really rich and warming and anti-inflammatory. So heat your saucepan. First, I have it on medium heat here, just enough to melt the coconut oil, and I'm just going to add all ingredients together, but start with spices and my coconut oil first. So if you're using a non-dairy beverage in place of a full-fat coconut milk, go ahead and add your coconut oil. I'm going to scrape this with my finger. Add my grated ginger. I'm going to combine these. So my pan's pretty hot. That oil's melting quickly. At the end of this, if your ginger is really fibrous, you can strain the beverage over a thin mesh strainer to get some of the solids of the ginger out of the milk. I don't tend to mind them because I know that they're beneficial, so I drink them. But if you want this to be really smooth and creamy, you can absolutely strain some of that out. All I did was use like a zester or one side of a box grater to really finely grate the ginger, and you get a lot of the juice and the pulp, and some of the strings are left behind, so there's not a ton in there. But I've got that warming, so I'm going to turn the heat down just a little bit and add my spices. So I need about a teaspoon of turmeric, the same. Start with a half a teaspoon of cinnamon and give it a taste. I'm going to add probably about a quarter of a teaspoon of the black pepper. You want enough, but don't want to overpower the flavor of this beverage with black pepper because it can be very strong. I'm going to combine the spices with my oil. And then you can add your coconut milk or your non-dairy beverage or your cow's milk if that's what you're opting for. And we're just gonna whisk that together again. A pinch of sea salt is really nice here, so I'll grate a little bit of that in. I'm just gonna whisk this very well until it's combined. You'll notice that the cinnamon and the turmeric might clump a little bit, so we wanna break up those little globs that form to allow it to be a cohesive mixture. If you have an immersion blender, that's nice here. At the end, if you can use a milk frother to make it foamy, that's also really nice. And we'll just heat it and continue to whisk, and then add the honey towards the end. So all of my ingredients are now combined and I've whisked it pretty thoroughly. I'm gonna bring this to a soft boil. So turn the heat up to medium high, bring it to a boil, and then reduce it to a simmer and let it sit on the stove for about 10 minutes before you enjoy it. I thought I'd show you very briefly what I did to grate the ginger. So I have a four-sided box grater. If you have a zester, you could use that as well. I'm using this finest side here that looks most similar to a zester if you have one, and I chopped off a small finger portion of the ginger and I just grated it against this tiny side of the box here, and it really didn't form any kind of grate on the inside, but it did form a soft sort of liquidy pulp on the outside, and most of the strings, fibrous parts of the ginger were left behind. So I scraped that off just with a finger and right into my teaspoon measure. Nice boil here. So I'm gonna turn the heat down to medium low and just let it continue to simmer for about 10 minutes. So it's all done. It's been simmering for about 10 minutes. I whisked it very vigorously again. At this point, if you have a milk frother, great time to use it. I'm just gonna pour it into one of my favorite mugs.